Listen to my voice, learn to undo error, and do something to correct it. JCIM, Jesus Course in Miracles. Chapter 1, page 4. The forgiven are the means of atonement. Those realized by Christ must join in releasing their brothers, for this is the plan of the atonement. Miracles are the way in which minds which serve the Spirit unite with Christ for the salvation or release of all God's creations. Number 35. Miracles are expressions of love, but it does not follow that they will always have observable effects. I am the only one who can perform miracles indiscriminately because I am the atonement. You have a role in the atonement, which I can dictate to you. Ask me which miracles you should perform. This spares you exhaustion because you will act under direct communication. 36. Christ-controlled miracles are a part of the atonement, but Christ's guidance is personal. The impersonal nature of miracles is the essential ingredient, because this enables me to control their distribution. Christ's guidance leads to the higher personal experience of revelation. This is why it involves personal choice. A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving the following up to you. Lead us not into temptation means guide us out of our own errors. Take up thy cross and follow me means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. Remember that error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is really vulnerable. You are free to establish your kingdom where you see it fit, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember this. The soul is in a state of grace forever. Man's reality is only his soul. Therefore, man is in a state of grace forever. Atonement undoes all errors in the respect that uproot the real source of fear. Whenever God's reassurances are experienced as threats, it is always because you are defending misplaced and misdirected loyalty. This is what projection always involves. Error is a lack of love. When man projects this onto others, he does imprison them, but only to the extent that he reinforces errors they have already made. This makes them vulnerable to the distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. The miracle worker can only bless, and thus undoes their distortions and frees them from prison. 37. Miracles are example of right thinking. Reality on contact at all levels becomes strong and accurate, thus permitting correct delineation of intra and interpersonal boundaries. As a result, the doer perception are aligned with truth as God created it. 38. A miracle is a correction factor introduced into false thinking by me. It acts as a catalyst, shaking up erroneous perceptions and reorganizing it properly. This places man under the atonement principle where his perception is healed. Until this has occurred, revelation of the divine order is impossible. 39. The spiritual eye is the mechanism of miracles, because what is perceived is true. It perceives both the creation of God and the creation of man. Among the creation of man, it can also separate the true from the false by its ability to perceive totally, rather than selectively. It is thus becomes the proper instrument for reality testing, which always involves the necessary distinction between the false and the true. 40. The miracle dissolves error because the spiritual eye identifies error as false or unreal. This is the same as saying that by perceiving light, darkness automatically disappears. Darkness is a lack of light, as sin is a lack of love. It has no unique properties of its own. It is an example of the scarcity fallacy, from which only error can proceed. Truth is always abundant. Those who perceive and acknowledge that they have everything have no need for driven behavior of any kind. 41. The miracle acknowledges all men as your brother and mine. It is a way of perceiving the universal mark of God in them. The specialness of God's Son does not stem from exclusion, but from inclusion. All my brothers are special. If they believe they are derived from anything, their perceptions become disoriented. When this occurs, the whole family of God, or the sonship, is impaired in its relationship. Ultimately, every member of the family of God must return. The miracle calls him to return, because it blesses and honors him even though he may be absent in spirit. God is not mocked, is not a warning, but a reassurance on the point. God would be mocked if any of his creations lacked holiness. The creation is whole, and the mark of wholeness is holiness. 42. Wholeness is the perception content of miracles. It thus corrects or atones for the faulty perception of lack anywhere. Here we begin to make the fundamental distinction between miracles and projections. The stimulus must precede the response, and will also determines the kind of response that is evoked. Behavior is response, so that the question, response to what, becomes crucial, since stimuli are identified through perceptions. You first perceive the stimulus, and then behave accordingly. It follows then that, as ye perceive, so shall ye believe. And that's the end of page 4.